So welcome everyone. It's time to tap into your personal power and pull up a cup for this episode of the InPower Coffee Break. I'm Mary Brody and I'm with InPower Coaching, and today our guest is Shannon Muruli. And she just authored the book, Do It Afraid, and she also has the School of Courage, and we have her back. This is her second time back, so welcome back, Shannon.
Yay, I'm glad to be back.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so if you're live on the video and you want to join the conversation, just leave us a note in the chat box and we'll bring you right in. And just so you know, we hold these coffee breaks live every Tuesday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, to explore InPower topics and strategies that help you achieve work-life satisfaction and lead in a pro-human workplace. So join us live, watch and listen to past recordings at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes at InPower Coffee Break. So now to get to it, I'm going to introduce our guest, Shannon. So Shannon Muruli is a motivational speaker, personal growth coach, and creator of the School of Courage for Women and other courage-based brands, courses, and events. Shannon was named by i10 Magazine as one of the top 40 under 40 emerging leaders in Dallas in 2015 and has been featured in Bouse Magazine, Women Are Game Changers, faillearngrow.org, and is a former ambassador for the Dallas Entrepreneur Center. Shannon is a seasoned and sought-after keynote speaker and courageously takes the stage as a speaker for various events. She received training from Fowler International Academy for Professional Coaching and obtained both a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master's in Public Health with Behavioral Science courses from Florida A&M University. Her education and training has helped her excel in sales, the network marketing industry, and as a corporate recruiter, life management teacher, and now as an entrepreneur and courage coach to aspiring professional women. Besides having a passion for her purpose, being a health enthusiast, a lover of family, fashion, fun, books, good laughs, and God, Shannon is a giver, which is why, after being diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition in 2010, she launched You Can Do Tough. And this is an initiative as a private scholarship program to help provide a small capital injection to assist a woman who may be experiencing hard times financially because of her chronic autoimmune condition, but has not lost her ambition to start or progress in a particular profession or industry that she is passionate about. And also, she just released her book, Do It Afraid, which I've started listening to a little bit. I got a little bit into it. Lots of great stories in there. So welcome, Shannon. Welcome back.
Hi, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back. Thank you, Mary, for that warm. I don't know who that woman is. Every time you read all that stuff, I'm like, who is this woman she's referring to?
Well, I know you changed so many women's lives. Every time I go to one of your events, I see these women who start one way, and like after a couple of months, I come back and I'm like, who are these people? Yeah. They go through such a transformational journey.
It's definitely inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah. You and what, like your book, I'd like to talk about that for a little bit, because I started listening to it, and one of the stories that really hit me was this woman who was working in, I think, a government agency, and she was always sitting in the back, right? Sitting in the back. You encouraged her to like basically do the lean in, right? The lean in moment. She started talking. And she then just didn't stop. And now she's talking on stages, presenting all these ideas. Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk to that at all, or.
Yeah, and this happened, I think it was in 2012, I believe. One of my brands underneath School of Courage is Fire Her. And it's all about, not deciding not to listen to that inner voice that's saying you can't or you will fail, and listening to those fear-based predictions that have never happened yet. So with this particular young woman, she was college educated, and she was very much involved in the political realm, but she was a little bit younger. She was in her early 20s. And she would go to these meetings every month in her city. Now, these meetings had well-known politicians who had major influence, mayors, big city council individuals. And so even though she had education and just a little experience, she felt like she could really bring something to the table. But because that inner voice was saying, you know, these people are above you. You know, they'll never listen to someone as young as you who doesn't have the title like you. And so she just kind of sat back and she shrunk. You know, she didn't allow her voice to be heard until, you know, one time we were having this conversation doing one of our Fire Her challenges. And she came to me and she said, you know what, Shannon, I believe that I could contribute X, Y, Z. And I said, well, why don't you? She said, well, I don't think that they would take me serious enough. You know, all the excuses that we tell ourselves. And I said, well, you know, this is what I want you to think about. Sometimes you only get one shot. That's it. Sometimes you only get one shot. And every time you decide not to take up the opportunity to make your voice heard, you are allowing yourself to shrink. And you are allowing yourself to not really show up and shine the way that you could be shining for other people who don't have a voice. Like your one idea could change the trajectory of the community or of a situation that those politicians probably don't have access to because they're so far removed from what many of the masses need and want. And so when she heard that information, she decided to not just in one moment just go and say, hey, I'm just going to show up and share. She decided every single week she was going to do a little bit more the next time. So that looked like this, guys. That looked like the next meeting, she decided to go from sitting in the back of the room to now going up one seat further. One seat, one row further, one row further. And then she found herself at the very front of the room. And when she got to that point, she looked back one day and she said, wow, I actually made it to the front of the room. Like I cultivated the courage to do this. And so on one of the meetings, she said to herself, they were talking about something related to the community. And she knew that she had a piece of advice. She knew that if she just could raise her hand, that she could possibly be that answer to the problem. And so she did. And because she decided to do that, the whole room looked at her like, wait a minute, have you been the woman that has been sitting in this meeting all along? Like with that much knowledge, that much information. And I tell you, she was so excited because she said at the end of that, just sharing that tip, a reporter came to her and said, wow, would you mind sharing that information, you know, on a broadcast? Another person came to her and said, you know what, we're looking to start up this particular initiative in the community. Would you mind giving us your input? All because she decided to cultivate the courage and speak and no longer shrink. So that's what that story is referring to in the Do It Afraid book. And every time I even think about it, I think about her because she has gone on to, she's now, I think, in Germany, you know, just doing amazing things because of that one shot that she decided to take.
That's incredible. That is like an incredible story. So tell us, tell everyone more about your book, Do It Afraid, because it's a very powerful, like stories like that. That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think Do It Afraid, honestly, to everyone looking, it is my life experiences and also the women who have impacted my life. So the name of the book is the Do It Afraid book, Why Some of the Most Ambitious Women Are Afraid to Launch Their Dream. And so I believe that it really has little to do with your competence, right? In psychology, there's this thing called the confidence loop. And although I understand that from a scientific base, I believe that it's really your courage that actually helps you build the confidence. The more courageous you are, the more confident you will become. And so in the book, I talk about how these women who were knowledgeable and who were skillful, like Misty Copeland, who is a phenomenal ballet dancer, right? But for a period of time, she was afraid of being the first. She was afraid of being the first African-American woman to really show up and shine. And it had nothing to do with her competence and her skill, but she lacked the courage because she had never seen anybody do exactly what she wanted to do that looked like her. So the story is about women who had that inner passion, but because they were afraid of being rejected, afraid of, you know, being the first, or afraid of really trusting their intuition, they limited themselves for a long period of time. I also talk about a rapper in there. It's very interesting. You don't have the book. It goes from one to another with these stories. But I talk about a rapper who was very skilled in what she did, but because she was afraid to really show up and shine because she was connected to these relationships in her life, particularly men, right? Men who didn't see her on that level, men who didn't value her brilliance. And because she wanted so much to be in relationship with these individuals, she minimized her greatness for a long period of time. Now, she eventually did cultivate the courage to get out there and be great and express her greatness. But it took her a while because she was just afraid of showcasing that side of her. So the book is all about just sharing the stories that many of us, we admire women in certain respects, in certain professions, but I believe that they just simply made a decision to be courageous enough. And even if they felt afraid, over time, they learned how to do it afraid.
Yeah. So what do you give as advice to women to gain that courage? Because that can be hard, right? Because you still feel the fear. I know I refer to when I do things sometimes like being the lemming that jumps off the cliff. Like that's how sometimes I feel like I'm just running and doing it and hope it turns out okay. Because I'm still feeling afraid. So how does this work?
Well, I think the feeling really doesn't go anywhere. I think that it starts to minimize the more you do it. But I think one of the things I want all of the listeners to do is to stop trying to be fearless. Stop trying to be fearless. Because for one, fear is a natural emotion. Anytime you are trying to do anything new or attempting to do anything new, there's going to be a level of discomfort. You're going to be uncomfortable. It can be something as simple as starting a new diet, right? For me, that may be particularly easy because I've done it so many times. Now, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm okay with that because I've done it enough times to really know that nothing really bad is going to happen. But because you haven't done it before, it's new. It can be as simple as having that hard conversation, raising your hand in that meeting. There's always going to be some level of feeling uncomfortable because you've never done it before. So you are going to feel some level of fear if you're wanting to take your life to the next level. It's going to be there. So just stop trying to be fearless because it's a waste of time and energy. Okay? It's not going anywhere. It's not. Okay? So that's the first thing. And the second thing I believe we need to do is change our stories, right? Change our stories. And this is what I mean by that. There is an Englishman by the name of Roger Bannister in the 1950s. And Roger Bannister was an athlete, and he was also studying medicine. And at the time, there was no one who had ever ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. 1 mile, no one had ever ran 1 mile in less than 4 minutes. And so he had this bright idea that he wanted to be the first. And all of these other scientists and professionals were saying, no, the human body is not made to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And so because he had an interest in medicine, he went and conducted his own research. He had the courage to do that now. He had the courage to say, okay, well, I respect your input. I respect your insight, but I'm going to go and do my own due diligence. So he did his research, and in all of his findings, there was nothing that implicated that the human heart was going to blow up. Nothing. It didn't say if you run the mile in 4 minutes, he didn't find that the heart was going to explode. So when the Olympics came around, he told everybody that I'm going for it. I'm going to run the mile I'm going to run the mile in less than 4 minutes. So what he did, he began to see himself doing that, right? And how did he see himself doing it? First of all, through visualization. Then I believe that he began to see himself because he began to practice every single day. And the more he ran those laps, the more he became a little bit faster. Again, courage, or the courage to act will increase your confidence, right? That courageously. And so the more he did that, he began to see himself, I'm actually going to run this mile in less than 4 minutes. So by the time the race was there, he had already developed the belief. He had already changed his story from adopting I can't to I can. No matter how many people around him had told him his heart was going to blow up, it's not possible. He had developed a new story, and he did it even though he was afraid, right? He decided to do it. Well, it could be some truth in it, but I've just decided that I'm going to create a new story. And you guys know what happened after that. He ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. I think it was 3 minutes and 54 seconds or something like that. But this was
seconds. Yeah.
Now, this is the interesting thing. And just a couple of weeks later, there were 2 other people that ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. And their score was even, I think it was 3 minutes and 50 seconds. And then the next person was 3 minutes and 47 seconds. You guys see what I'm saying? So the more we decide to change our stories, we give other people permission to do the same. So I believe that that's the next thing we can do, is simply change our stories. And that comes with action. That comes with seeing yourself actually changing that story and then doing something about changing the story, like taking actions that you never took before.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
His name is Roger Bannister. So if you ever want to look up that story, that's the story that I'm referring to. And every time I think about Roger Bannister, I can only just imagine, like, you know, you have this stadium full of people who had never seen this before. And although they probably wanted to believe that it could happen, a part of them, they're so afraid because of their own beliefs. And here you are just in your zone, trusting and believing your own gut that you have the ability to do it. So I think when you get to that level of trusting yourself, that's when you'll begin to do it afraid even the more. Because, okay, well, I did it that time. Okay, I think I can do it again over here. I think I can change my career again. And I think when we think about Dana, when she talks about that fluid career, that's how we see so much fluidity happening in, you know, careers. People are not holding themselves hostage to one career for 30 years just because they feel like, you know, I can't transition anymore. And I'm gonna let you kind of, you know, take us in that direction. But that's how I think about how people are just now giving themselves permission to actually change their story and change their careers at the same time.
No, that's awesome how you segmented, because I was getting ready to bring up the fluid career. So you read my mind. Because, you know, when you're bringing up the story too, I just wanted to add in real quick. There's the whole, like you were talking about the confidence competence.
Yeah.
I was reading an article about this at Harvard Business Review had something about this, about how women have the competence, but they don't have the confidence. And then men have all this confidence, and that's where they'll have 60% of the qualifications, and they apply and go get the job. And women might have 100%. They feel that they have this belief that they need 100% before they go apply for the job, and they have that lack. And what you're saying with the courage, if you can get beyond that with the courage, you can still be afraid, but change the beliefs, right? And get to the
because I believe that yes, you do need competence, but I think that wasn't the issue for me. I had the education and I had the competence. I had the, you know, how to do it. I had the how-tos. I just did not have the courage because a lot of the stories that I had believed and adopted over the years. So in order for me to change the story, it wasn't more information that was going to do that. I actually had to do something different. So courage is all about taking action. And so although I do believe and understand the whole confidence loop, I believe that I had a different kind of loop. Okay. Mine was the courage confidence loop. The more courageous I was, the more confident I became. And in between all of that, I developed competence, right? Because I realized, oh, well, I made this mistake, and here's what I need to go and improve. This is what I learned, or this is what I need to do different. And all of that happened in the midst of me being courageous enough to take action, finding out what I need to know, and that helped me build my confidence. So my loop is the courage confidence loop. That's my loop. But, you know, I do understand what they mean by confidence, but I just believe that courage has a major role in that.
Okay, so now let's say you, because one of the things we're noticing with the fluid career is people changing their jobs every 3.7 years, right? Or
Yeah.
3.5, something like that. And so you could potentially have one or two major careers in a lifetime, right? With all these different jobs in between. When I was talking with Lori Darley last week, she was talking about she mentioned how many women who are in their early 40s coming to her for a career change, right? Like we're talking a full, not just like a little job, right? Little job shift. We're talking full on new life. Now, let's say there are some listeners who are in that stage. Like, let's say they're going through life. They're like, I've got to change. Like, I'm not happy where I am. They've noticed the dissatisfaction building, right? What would you say to them when they're starting to feel that angst, for lack of a better word, right? I gotta change. What advice would you give to them?
Well, I think it's all normal. It's all relative. Again, that third layer of the brain, I call the lizard brain, or Seth Godin, I think, termed it as the lizard brain. That part of the brain is the oldest, most primitive part of the brain. And its goal is to keep you safe, right? It's to keep you safe. And the thing is, it goes a little bit too far, right? That safety will sometimes sabotage you actually taking your life to a new level. I believe that we all have a calling, but sometimes our callings change, right? Sometimes, we all have a purpose, but sometimes our purpose change. And, when people are wanting to make that kind of career change, it's not that, it's something like I'm too old to actually make this career change. It's your life is requiring a little bit more from your calling. Your life is requiring you to do a little bit more, and that's uncomfortable. But that part of the brain wants you to feel like if you make this move, then you're going to fail. I call it horribilizing things. You begin to predict something horrible is going to happen if you leave your little safe job that you've mastered for 10, 15 years, and you go over to something that you've never done based on a title. But I can almost guarantee you that there are going to be some aspects of that career change that you've actually done before in all of those 10 or 15 years. Like you've done, like nothing is so new. Like you're not going to go from, I don't believe, going from medicine to going to want to be an astronaut. But even if you did, like you may have to learn something technical, but the gist of it is you are capable of handling it. And that part of the brain, the third layer, it believes that you cannot handle it. And so that's why I believe it's very important that even if you're in a career and you're wanting to make a change, that you do something that you've never done before within that career, so that you can get comfortable with making changes. So even when you get to that big career change, it may look big to everybody else, but you've done so much in your past career that, okay, well, this is just another change that I'm making. Like you don't have to see it as a big change. It's just a change, right? It's just a change. And so that's what I believe about this whole fluid career. And I think more people are embracing it. I know for me, oh my God, if I tell you all how many, maybe they weren't career changes, but I've made a lot of changes when it came to employment. And it's because I felt like, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that too. I can be in customer service in this field. I can do medical sales, and I can also sell copier machines. I can do them both because you know why? It's just relating to people. That's just what it is. You're just relating to another human being and solving a problem. So I think, again, the stories that this part of the brain wants to convince you that, you're not able to handle it, and you actually really are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This is a very empowering phone call conversation today for the coffee break. I really enjoyed it. I'm getting so much out of it because this is applying to some stuff on my end too for changes and things like that. Every time I talk to you, I always get inspired and pick up something new. So this is great. This is really good.
Absolutely. I'm enjoying it as well. I always enjoy you, Mary B. We always have very interesting conversations. But I do want to challenge the viewers to really, if they haven't taken time, to really think about what their life looked like in 2016. what did it look like in 2015? And the first quarter of this year, we're coming to an end. Does it look the same as the past 2 years, right? And if it does, you probably want to start looking at the things that you believe to be true about yourself. What are some of the things that you're not giving yourself permission to do? Like, seriously, like, why won't you just simply make the phone call if you need to make the phone call? Why don't you just simply find out, how do you write the first book? Just start making those simple changes so that you can start to see yourself. Most of the time we want to change, but we don't actually see ourselves becoming that person. Like Roger Bannister, I believe that he actually saw himself running that mile. And so we have to see it before it happens to actually begin to believe it every single day. I tell my audience all the time that, you know, I speak now, but for years, for 20 plus years, I was afraid to do something as simple as this, just talk, you know, especially to people. I don't know how many people are looking at this, but I horribilized it in my mind because I had these stories from my childhood that, you know, Shannon, you don't speak well enough, or you speak too Southern, or all these different stories that I believe. But once I began to challenge them by taking action, it began to change for me. So if you haven't taken the time to really think about what it is you want to achieve, and if you're not seeing any results or seeing the changes that you want to make, start looking at the stories that you've adopted. Start looking at those stories, and then start making or taking those courageous actions every single day. Little simple things you can do to start cultivating your courage, and you'll see that your confidence will begin to change. And you'll probably find yourself closer to achieving that goal, changing that career than you've ever done before.
Powerful. If people want to get in touch with you and have questions for you or want to learn more, what's the best way for them to reach you?
You can go to or visit ShannonMuruli.com. That's ShannonMuruli.com, and I believe you all will have it on the website.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram and on Twitter under @ShannonMuruli. And those are the two places you can find me as well.
This was awesome. As always, it's awesome. So powerful, very, very, very inspiring. Lots of great takeaways. I love the challenge that you propose to people to look at the past 2 years and rewrite their stories. That's such a powerful.
Yeah, rewrite. That's the perfect word, Mary. I love that. Rewrite your story. And it also brings about a sense of self-responsibility. You know, it's a responsibility that you're taking on. One of my mentors, he tells us all the time, not just me, but you owe you. Like, you owe you. Don't cry just to cry. Cry to say, I'm going to push through this, because you do owe you. You do owe yourself the right to change your story. You don't have to end up, I'm going to get kind of personal here just for a second. Like, I don't know who my father is. Never met my father, don't know who he is. But I decided not to let that be my story when it came to finding a great husband for me. You know, so like, you don't have to believe the story. If you don't have a father in your life, then you're going to end up a certain kind of way. Like, you can change that story by rewriting your story with seeing yourself differently and taking different actions. And so you owe you. You owe yourself the right to change your story. And that's what I want to encourage all of the listeners to do, even if you have to do it afraid. You know, it may be uncomfortable for the people in your life. The people in your life may be uncomfortable with you deciding to rewrite your story. But again, you owe you. So pay yourself because you're worth it.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming on again. This was
You're
awesome.
welcome. I enjoyed it.
So wonderful. Thank you so much. And so everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the InPower Coffee Break. And please visit us at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com to see upcoming topics, past recordings, and learn how you can join us live. Thanks, everyone, and have an InPower day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.